Hello, my name is Alex from the Advent Label Applicator Company. This is going to be a demonstration video of an Advent 200. An Advent 200 is a plain paper labeler that uses hot melt adhesive to wrap a label around a round container anywhere from 1 inch to about 10 inches in diameter, which I think is about 12 millimeters on up. We have the machine turned on, or the heater's been warming up for about 90 minutes. It turns nice and freely. We've already set it up for this smaller container, and this container is probably the most difficult of the three because it has the least amount of clearance. We're talking about 2 millimeters, and we're running it up right against that edge. So let me just go ahead and go through the adjustments we made. As you can see here, we have a carriage that supports the spinning container, and that's fully adjustable by turning this knob, so we could go for different diameters. As you can see here, it moves these white tires, and we have it set up for this container. And you can see the most important adjustment is that the supporting rollers are fully adjustable and allow us to clear these high points. And we're doing that both on the front and the rear. And they have, everything has set screws so they can be adjusted left and right. And we'll go ahead and do that adjustment on all the other containers. But that's the critical adjustment to running these containers with chimes, we call them chimes, successfully. So I'm going to go ahead and put the overhead pressure arm down. That's a standard feature on the machine. It allows unfilled or light containers to work quite well, so that it doesn't skip. And let me just go here. Just want to orient the labels correctly. So this is your leading edge. You want to fan it forward. We have a label hopper. Usually you just work with these guides. We have long label guides on this machine, which could help if you have a container that slightly, it could just help with longer containers, and that's usually longer labels, and that's usually when it's about 18 to 20 inches in length. Okay, so we go ahead, tap it down. You can see it's going to move that one label. When you make your adjustments, usually the rule of thumb is to match the width of the label and then keep everything outside the perimeter of the label clear. So then that's a good rule of thumb. So I'm just going ahead, turn it on here, orient it correctly, 2 hands, just put it to the rollers, and you see it will take it out of my hand, and then I'll just put that label on. Single label, and you can see here, usually rated within about 2 millimeters or 1/16 of an inch. And we are putting a skip glue pattern on this label. So you can see here, when I tear it down, it's only putting glue on the trailing edge, which is about 1/2 inch. And on this label stock, we're putting about 2.5 to 3 inches of glue. And it's on there very, very securely, as you can see. Okay. Alright, so let me go ahead, same container, orient it correctly, just insert. You can see that single label goes on perfectly, with perfect overlap in this case, aimed quite nicely because we have a little bit of clearance on the bottom, and it just looks fantastic. On there, very, very tight, no bubbles, no wrinkles, looks great. So I'm going to take those labels out, and then I'm going to go ahead and switch it. Alright, so I'm going to grab these labels here. I'm just going to grab my stack here. And generally you want to work off the center line of the label feed system. And that's the middle feed tire with this plastic sleeve. And that's usually your, you don't have to be perfectly in the center line, but that's usually your starting point. And then so what we try to do is put the labels through the center of the machine, and then we can move the container left and right. So I'm going to move these guides out of the way. Generally we don't have to use them on these labels, and you can see it's just simple thumb locks. You can see what I did is I just opened these up, kind of sided that it's going to be nice and even. I'm just going to go ahead and tighten you want them too tight. You want this first tire to be able to move this label. Now you can move these guides in place, which I'm going to go ahead and do. The only problem with using these long label guides is if you have it tilted in any way, it could affect the how accurate the labels could go on. It could cant the labels. So generally on shorter labels I prefer not to use them, but just to show you the adjustment. Okay, so generally you want to move that label down, open up your guides, put the overhead pressure arm, and this is pretty much, we're not even going to have to move these stainless steel colors or these white tires. You could spread them out a little bit, but they look pretty good to me. So what I like to do is just sight it where I think that label needs to go, and then bring my guides into place. You don't want them too tight, you want a little bit of clearance, as you can see here. And then we need to adjust for the diameter. And what I'm doing is I want to get the container close to this finger bar, this brass finger bar, where it's not touching it. Usually you want it hovering over about 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch. And whenever I adjust my carriage, I'm going to have to adjust my overhead pressure arm. You can see the gap is quite big now, quite large. So I'm just going to go ahead. Okay, so the camera shut off, so we're just going to start. We were adjusting the overhead pressure arm, and again, that's just, we move it to the center line of the container, and then we tighten it up when there's a little bit of a gap right here. And what that allows you to do is to insert the container without having to lift up the overhead pressure arm each and every time. Okay, so we're going to turn it on, and then we'll see how close we are. Okay. So you can see I'm a little bit off. I aimed it too low. So generally, instead of moving the labels left and right, it's much easier to move the container. And you can see I'm just loosening up my thumb locks, and I'm moving the container. And again, you want to give yourself a little bit of clearance. Okay, put this one off to the side, and then I'm going to go ahead and do it with this one. Just like that. Perfectly placed. Now, still a little bit on the low side. Ideally, we want to get that label closer to the top edge. So again, I can make my adjustment. Okay, so this one's going to be a little bit smaller. Insert that and see where we are. I'm just going to use the same. And there we go. That's absolutely perfect. Okay. Then we'll go back to our original container. I'll turn that off, and I'll just show you the skip glue pattern again. Still goes on perfectly. It was misaligned. But as you can see here, very, very secure, and it automatically adjusts for that length of label. There's no settings or anything that you have to worry about. So let me get that off a little bit better. Get those labels away. And then we'll just go ahead and label this. And there we go. And with the old label material, you just pull it out, single label goes on. Absolutely perfect. And this one has good clearance. This is the type of clearance that we're looking for on these chimes. Just makes setup a little bit easier and consistent. So we're going to do our final changeover. So I'm going to grab. Okay, so again, I'm going to open up these guides. And on these labels, I don't think you have to run these. So on this one, I'm just going to put these off to the side just to see how it runs. Again, everything's adjustable on the Advent 200, usually with a set screw. So if we needed to move, we can move these white or black label feed tires a little bit wider for a wide label. I don't think we have to in this case. So I'm just going to let them be. As you can see here. We just want to see it pulls through nicely. And then going back to that trick, or not a trick, but a helpful hint, you just want to match the label width. Because what these stainless steel collars are doing are they're pushing the label onto the surface of the container. So those are always very essential to match the width. And you can see here I'm just using a set screw. Excuse me. And I usually like to space myself about 1/2 inch from the side, because that gives me some flexibility as far as if I need to make a fine adjustment with the label, as you saw in the last. And just to show you, they don't have to be perfectly spaced, so just kind of slide this one over, and that's good. And you want to make sure you always tighten the set screw on this flat, and that they're inside the perimeter of the stainless steel collar. And we can certainly, generally once you get the rear adjusted correctly, it's very simple to deal with the white tires. Again, it says set screw. There's a flat on the shaft, and we could just slide those over. Just one. It's probably good enough. Just like that. I could separate these two, but that should work great. Alright, so I just want to see where I am. So what I'm doing is I'm just eyeing it for now. A little bit of clearance. Okay. Then I need to adjust for the diameter. And that's actually pretty similar. It's actually the same diameter, so we don't even need to adjust it. Overhead pressure arm looks good. There's still a gap. It's pretty much in the center line. The only thing I like to do is when I'm doing my adjustment and I leave a label in here for a while, I like to pull the labels out because the heat might curl them. So I'll just restack the labels, as you can see here. Fan them forward a little bit. Generally pinch in the middle. If I missed the top label, I just pull it out. And you can see it's moving, the top label. And the only other adjustment you really have to worry about is the timer. This tells how long for the clutch to spin for. To get the pre-feed, you just need enough to get up to the spinning container. On a usually your adjustments are between 3 and 5. Okay, I'm going to just turn it to 4. Insert, and there we go. Very, very simple. Perfect overlap. Absolutely flush with the surface of the container. Looks great. Based on that one, I might want to get a little bit closer to the top. So just again to show you that adjustment. Just moving my guide in and giving it a little bit of clearance on the bottom. Okay. There we go. Now I'm closer to the top. And that is as good as it gets. And again, you have that skip glue pattern that's automatically compensated or adjusted. And of course that allows this label to lay up really nicely, minimize any wrinkling, and it saves you about 75% as far as your glue usage is concerned. It's a really great feature on the Advent 200, and it's nothing that you have to maintain. Alright, so we'll just finish up this video. We have this container. And there we go. I think I'm a little bit too close to that edge, but as you can see, looks really good. I think I'm just going to do my one final adjustment. There we go. And I'm just going to rip this off and we'll just get it perfect. Again. This should be our last one. And there we go. And that's perfectly adjusted. You got about 1/16 of an inch top and bottom. Looks great. Good overlap. And as you can see here, we did a changeover with 3 different containers. Once you get comfortable with the changeover, it should take no more than about 3 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes to do a changeover. All you're doing is adjusting the carriage and then making the appropriate adjustments on your supporting rollers. And that is the Advent 200. Thank you.